Hello there, welcome to today's edition of A World Panorama, a program that gives you a complete roundup of all the biggest international news stories. I'm Aishwarya Kapoor with you. Let us start the program with the headlines. US House panel launches probe into possible obstruction of justice and abuse of power by Donald Trump. Committee seeks the documents from 81 people and groups. Huawei sues the US government over a law banning company's equipment. Chinese telecom company says US Congress has failed to produce any evidence to support its restrictions on its products. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau denies interfering in judicial system. Responds to allegations of improper pressure being put on one of his ministers to help a construction firm avoid a criminal trial. Venezuela expels a German ambassador for meddling. He, along with some other diplomats, had welcomed home opposition leader Juan Guaido at a Caracas airport. Trump administration revokes visas of 250 people aligned with President Maduro. And car bomb in Somalia kills 7 people. Blast in heavily guarded area of Mogadishu near Presidential Palace. This is the second blast in a week. Al-Shabaab claims responsibility for both the attacks. In a setback for Donald Trump, the US House panel has launched a probe into possible obstruction of justice and abuse of power by the president. Opening the investigation, the committee chairman, Jerrold Nadler, declared that it is very clear that the president obstructed justice. Now, Nadler's added lines of inquiry come as special counsel Robert Mueller is believed to be wrapping up his work into possible questions of Trump campaign collusion. Now that Democrats hold a majority in the House, the new probe is a sign that Trump's legal and political peril is nowhere near over.
After emerging empty-handed from a high-profile summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un on denuclearization, setbacks for US President Donald Trump at home too. He has been accused of obstructing justice. The House Judiciary Committee launched a new probe of Trump, his White House, his campaign and his businesses. For the same, the committee has sought documents from 81 people and groups. Among them are Trump's son, the FBI and WikiLeaks. Committee Chairman Jerrold Nadler says the investigation will be focused on possible obstruction of justice, corruption and abuse of power. The documents sought are related to allegations of Russian collusion in US election. Responding to the investigation, Trump said he will cooperate but added it's all a hoax.
Are you going to cooperate with Mr. Nadler?
I cooperate all the time with everybody. And you know the beautiful thing? No collusion, it's all a hoax. You're going to learn about that as you grow older. It's a political hoax. There's no collusion.
More than 5 House committees are now investigating alleged Russia meddling efforts in 2016, the president's tax returns and potential conflicts of interest involving Trump's family. This even as special counsel Robert Mueller's Russia investigation is winding down. Mueller is preparing to submit a report to US Attorney General William Barr, detailing his findings in the investigation into Russia's role in the 2016 presidential election and any links to the Trump campaign. There are demands that once Mueller's report is submitted, it be made public.
I believe the Russians interfered or attempted to interfere with the election, and I think we have to get to the bottom of it.
So you would be in favor of releasing the investigative report when it's completed?
As I've said, I'm in favor of as much transparency as there can be, consistent with the rules and the law.
Meanwhile, in another development, Trump's former campaign manager Paul Manafort has been sentenced to 47 months in prison for tax and bank fraud. However, Manafort has not been charged with anything related to Mueller's investigation into Russian interference in 2016 US presidential election.
As you heard in court today, Mr. Manafort finally got to speak for himself. He made clear he accepts responsibility for his conduct. And I think most importantly, what you saw today is the same thing that we had said from day one. There is absolutely no evidence that Paul Manafort was involved with any collusion with any government official from Russia.
The political world is feverishly anticipating Mueller's findings on whether the Trump campaign conspired with Russia or if Trump unlawfully sought to obstruct the inquiry. Trump's critics have also been discussing impeachment possibility, which experts say if initiated would be easier said than done.
I think that it's reasonably possible that he will be impeached, but impeached technically just means that the House of Representatives will vote to impeach. That just starts the process. The next step is that it goes to the Senate for a trial, and there you need 2/3 of the Senate to find him guilty and to remove him. That I don't think will happen. So I think he will be impeached, but not removed.
It is difficult time for Trump. Much will depend on the content of Mueller's inquiry report that will be submitted soon. Trump has denied collusion and obstruction, and Russia has denied election interference. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
China's first global tech brand, Huawei, is at the center of US-Chinese tensions over technology competition and cyber spying. The tech giant Huawei is suing the US government over an American ban on its products. It says that the ban violates the US Constitution by singling out an individual or group for punishment without trial. Now, this is Huawei's most aggressive move yet to fight back against US accusations that its technology poses a global security threat. Apart from the ongoing US-China trade war, the two nations are also bickering in another arena, that of telecom. Chinese tech giant Huawei is going to sue the US government over a ban. Huawei has filed a lawsuit in Texas against an American law that labels the company a security risk and a ban that restricts government agencies from using its product. The Chinese company, which is also a top smartphone maker, is asking a US federal court to overturn part of the National Defense Authorization Act, which was signed by US President Donald Trump in August.
We're highlighting the security risk that's inherent in a decision to go with a vendor from China, and in particular with this company Huawei, because of the past practices that they've adopted. So we will continue to engage with these governments and the regulators in those countries to educate them about what we know and to keep sharing sort of best practices for how we can all successfully move to the next generation of technology. I'll just say that there are plenty of options in the West.
The US has restricted the use of Huawei products over national security concerns. The US has also been lobbying allies to shun the Chinese telecom firm. Several other governments around the world, including Australia and New Zealand, have also blocked telecom companies from using Huawei gear in the next generation 5G mobile networks, citing security concerns. However, Huawei says the US failed to provide evidence to support the ban. The firm also rejected claims that it had links to the Chinese government. Beijing Foreign Ministry also denies the charge.
During the just concluded Mobile World Congress in Barcelona, Chinese enterprise Huawei has signed cooperation agreements with companies of many countries, which shows that most countries can make wise policy choices that are in their own practical interest, and most companies in the world are still committed to building and maintaining a fair and just market environment.
Huawei's court challenge takes its standoff with the US government to a next level. The company is one of China's biggest tech firms and a key player in the global rollout of super-fast 5G wireless networks. Washington has for years been suspicious that the Chinese government could use Huawei equipment to spy on other nations. In January, US prosecutors filed charges accusing Huawei of stealing trade secrets and its chief financial officer, Meng Wanzhou, of lying to banks about dealings with Iran. Meng, who is also the daughter of the company's founder, was arrested on 1st of December by Canadian authorities and is fighting a US extradition request. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's Liberal government has been rocked for weeks by a scandal which has triggered the resignation of two of his cabinet ministers and also has badly tarnished the image of the Golden Boy Premier. At the heart of the controversy are claims that Trudeau and his team pressured then Attorney General Jody Jerrold to cut a deal for a construction company, SNC-Lavalin, and that he demoted her when she refused. Now, Trudeau says that he has learned lessons from the crisis but denies any wrongdoing.
Canadian leader Justin Trudeau is facing his worst crisis in office. He is facing accusation of meddling in the prosecution of a corporate giant SNC-Lavalin. The scandal deepened last week when one of Trudeau's ministers, Jody Wilson-Raybould, resigned and told a parliamentary investigation committee that when she was Justice Minister and Attorney General, she had faced veiled threats from the Prime Minister and members of his inner circle over the corruption trial facing SNC-Lavalin. She said that she was being pressurized to find a solution for the firm and was in fact demoted from her post because she did not comply with their demand.
For a period of approximately 4 months between September and December of 2018, I experienced a consistent and sustained effort by many people within the government to seek to politically interfere in the exercise of prosecutorial discretion in my role as the Attorney General of Canada in an inappropriate effort to secure a deferred prosecution agreement with SNC-Lavalin.
In further blow to Trudeau, a second member of his cabinet resigned this week, saying she had lost confidence in how the government had dealt with the scandal. The departure is that of Treasury Board Minister Jane Philpott, who was in overall charge of government spending. The resignation deprives Trudeau of another powerful female member of cabinet just months ahead of federal elections. While denying all the allegations, Trudeau put up a brave face, saying he was disappointed.
And while I am disappointed, I understand her decision to step down, and I want to thank her for her service.
Two members of Trudeau's inner circle have also denied wrongdoing. Former Principal Secretary General Butts and the country's top public servant, Michael Wernick, were speaking to a parliamentary committee investigating the matter. Butts said that while he had spoken to Minister Jody about helping SNC-Lavalin Group, but there was no pressure on her.
I am fully aware that two people can experience the same event differently. I believe that the minister shared my interpretation of our dinner, and I only quote these messages so you can appreciate why I was so surprised to hear months later that the minister experienced that dinner as pressure. I do not see how our brief discussion of that file constituted pressure of any kind.
SNC-Lavalin is one of the world's largest engineering and construction companies. The company faces fraud and corruption charges and wanted an out-of-court settlement that Justice Minister Jody allegedly refused. Meanwhile, opposition leaders are now clamoring for Trudeau to resign. The blow to Trudeau's reputation could be deeply damaging for the Canadian leader, who since being elected in 2015 had been considered one of the most likable and trustworthy leaders on the world stage, especially by young liberals who praised his progressive views on feminism, climate change and immigration. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
In World Panorama, we'll take a very short break. More international stories that made headlines this week coming up ahead. Stay tuned. Venezuela's government has expelled a German ambassador, Daniel Kriner, 2 days after he and diplomats from other embassies welcomed home opposition leader Juan Guaido at the Caracas airport. This as the country continues to be in the throes of a political struggle between President Maduro and Guaido, who is recognized by about 50 nations as Venezuela's rightful president. The opposition blames Maduro's socialist policies for Venezuela's hyperinflation and severe shortages of food and medicine. And Maduro accuses Guaido of conspiring with the Trump administration in a campaign to overthrow him.
Political crisis in Venezuela deepens. Both President Nicolas Maduro and opposition leader Juan Guaido, who has declared himself to be the rightful leader of the country, continue to dig in their heels. Guaido, who leads the opposition-controlled National Assembly, had declared himself interim president on 23rd January and has been at loggerheads with President Maduro ever since.
Que sabemos que contamos con un pueblo movilizado y que mientras consolidemos la unidad, mientras consolidemos a este Parlamento, a la incorporación de sindicatos como el día de ayer, en un acto también sin precedentes, mientras incorporemos a todos los sectores.
Ni les paremos bolas, compatriotas. Vamos a pararles al trabajo, al estudio, a la unión nacional. A ellos ni les paremos bolas. Que siga la minoría alocada en su amargura. Los vamos a derrotar. Tengan la seguridad absoluta. Por Chávez lo haremos. Por la historia grande de la patria lo haremos.
President Maduro accuses Guaido of trying to mount a coup against him with the help of US imperialists. In a fresh development, Venezuela has given the German ambassador Daniel Kriner to the country 48 hours to leave, accusing him of meddling in internal affairs. Kriner was among the diplomats who helped Guaido return to Venezuela recently after he toured Latin American countries, flouting a court-imposed travel ban. Germany, which recognizes Guaido as interim president, says the decision will only escalate tensions. In a separate development, Venezuela also arrested American journalist Cody Weddle and his Venezuelan assistant on Wednesday morning. The reporter, who works for several US outlets, was released later in the day and is being deported. US insists that Maduro must go.
That's ultimately a decision for Venezuelans to make. But it's very hard, I would say, for me to see how a dictator such as Maduro, who has committed so many crimes against the people of Venezuela, who is so deeply responsible for the human rights violations, for the decline in Venezuela's economic situation, can really have a role to play in the building of a democratic Venezuela.
To put pressure on President Maduro to resign, the US says it is also revoking the visas of 77 more people linked to him. Washington had last week revoked visas of 49 other people. The Maduro government is becoming increasingly isolated as more and more countries blame it for the economic crisis, which is crippling the oil-rich country. While opposition leader Guaido has been recognized as interim president by more than 50 countries, but Maduro retains the support of his close allies Russia, Cuba and China among others. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Now, news from Somalia. A car bomb in Somalia's capital Mogadishu has killed 7 people and wounded several others. The bomb that went off on Thursday was in a car parked outside a restaurant near a checkpoint manned by the Presidential Guard Regiment. Al-Shabaab claimed responsibility for the attack. The blast is the second in less than a week following another car bomb last Thursday, which killed 36 people, mainly civilians. Security tightened across Somalian capital Mogadishu. This as the militant group Al-Shabaab carried out a deadly attack last week on Thursday at a hotel which left 36 people dead and another 60 wounded. A suicide bomber rammed an explosives-laden vehicle into Hotel Makkah Al Mukarrama and nearby buildings. On Friday evening, the government formally announced that it had ended the siege after security forces rescued 30 hostages and killed 4 armed attackers hiding in the targeted buildings.
I was inside the Maka Amuka Rama Hotel when the car bomb detonated. Heavy gunfire ensued for a while. The blast caused a huge fire and smoke covered the whole hotel. We couldn't see anything. Fortunately, we escaped with minor injuries.
Police also recovered more bodies from nearby buildings that collapsed during the attack, while many injured victims are being treated in local hospitals. Twisted vehicles and rickshaws destroyed in the attacks remain stricken on the main road in Mogadishu. Al-Shabaab has warned of more attacks in the coming days.
Al-Shabaab used 2 vehicles loaded with explosives to carry out the attack. This is a terrorist attack meant to create fear among the public. The group is targeting public places and markets. We condemn Al-Shabaab attacks that have no agenda other than frustrating recovery efforts.
Meanwhile, in an effort to bolster the Somali government, US also continues to battle Al-Shabaab. On Sunday, a US airstrike killed 35 of these terrorists. According to the figures released by US Africa Command, at least 180 fighters from the terrorist group have been killed in 22 airstrikes so far in 2019. There has been a significant increase in airstrikes since President Donald Trump authorized his military in March 2017 to carry out precision airstrikes targeting Al-Shabaab. Prior to that, the US military was authorized to carry out airstrikes only in self-defense. The Somali government has vowed to step up efforts to fight the extremist group.
The recent assault was an attack on civilians in Somalia, and there is only one option for us all: defeating the enemy of peace. We are now in the process of strengthening our armed forces, equipping them and providing logistical support. I assure you all that we will defeat Al-Shabaab.
The US Department of Defense estimates that there are 3,000 to 7,000 Al-Shabaab fighters in the country. The terrorist group aims to overthrow the Somali government and impose strict Islamic law. The militants are allied with the global Al-Qaeda group, while African Union troops managed to push them out of the center of the Somalian capital Mogadishu in 2011 and subsequently forced them out of all the urban strongholds. The group still remains active in the countryside. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. And finally, Indian Air Force pilot Wing Commander Abhinandan Vardhaman has become a legend of sorts after he shot down an F-16 aircraft in a dogfight with Pakistan Air Force, and the manner in which he carried himself with dignity on being held captive after his MiG-21 Bison was downed. Men in Bangalore have been flocking to barber salons to get their moustache trimmed in a style inspired by Wing Commander Abhinandan, who was freed by Pakistan. Now, some of the saloons also gave the Abhinandan style cut to all free for a day, saying it was the way to pay respect to the hero. So take a look at the visuals as we take your leave. I'll see you next week in another edition of World Panorama. Bye-bye.